through our 10 questions that we started dealing with last week or maybe even the week before. And we want to continue going down that rabbit hole. I'm going to open us in a word of prayer. I'm going to be reading a portion out of 1 Corinthians 13, make a brief observation about the concept of agape, or love, reiterate the distinction, and see if you guys are awake and with me, and then we'll go further into an analysis of what is extremely important to know for all of us. I do have 3 questions that were fielded to me through the email. We're going to tackle that. Hopefully we can open the door for some Q&A if some of you guys want to brave the honesty of the difficulty of what it means to love and to be loved, which is really the whole conversation around the world. Everything in our world is a consequence of a brokenness in the area of love, quite frankly. And so we'll open in a word of prayer. We'll look at this portion of Scripture, and then we will begin to revisit the distinction between desire and love and see what we can make of it in terms of discernment and application. Father, we thank you for your word. We thank you for your Son. We thank you for your grace. We thank you for the economy that we are in, this intermediate state between grace and glory, where you can be patient with us and where you can shape us and mold us into the image of Christ, where you can humble us and teach us, where we can make mistakes and overcome them by your grace, and to continue to advance in the purpose and will for which you have called us to be. I'm asking your mercy upon all of us as we peer into your word and really press into the mystery, the mystery of love, and the unique gift of desire, and how the two must properly engage in order for the outcome to be to your glory and your praise. And we pray for your people all around the world. We are particularly praying for singles, but more than that, for young people who are in a world where they are not properly taught how to prepare for relationship in a way in which they are not deeply and profoundly harmed or hurtful to someone else. So may our discourse tonight be pleasing in your sight, and help us, Father, to understand what you set up in the beginning when you made them male and female. In the image of God created he them, and you said the twain shall become one flesh. Help us to understand that more accurately, more honestly, more redemptively, more personally, and more broadly. We pray your blessings upon the Church of Christ around the world, and we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen, amen, amen. Let me get a little bottle of H2O. 1 Corinthians 13, starting at verse 4. I'm going to read it, make an observation. It really is now becoming for me a preparation for maybe a study, and I think I will make this a study versus a sermon, though sermon material is here. 1 Corinthians 13, verse 4, where the apostle picks up the subject of love. Charity here in the King James Version is really not a good translation. It should be love, because we can define charity in terms of actually what's taking place in verses 1 through 3. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not charity, I become as a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. Though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and knowledge, though I have all faith, so that I could remove mountains and have not charity, I am nothing. So the Apostle Paul is actually describing here how a person can have gifts and qualities, employ those gifts and qualities, and they not be rooted in a motive of love, and therefore the aim is not for the edification of others. He says, where there is not that foundational love that is driving the gifts, the very obvious reality is that a person applying those gifts are doing it for themselves. This is where we're going to pick up on the term narcissism here in a moment, because our world has actually cultivated in all of us an unhealthy sense of self-worth. And that has opened the door for harm to us as well because of a lack of understanding the biblical approach to identity. So here, this is what the apostle says in verses 4 through 8, 8a. We're not going to follow the latter part, verses 4 through 8, 8a. And listen to this, because I'm going to make an observation, then we're going to pick up in our discourse around the desire and love. Charity suffers long. Really, it should be love. If you find love, you'll find that love has this characteristic. It has the capacity to bear up under pressure for a long time. Love suffers long, and then love is also kind. Where you find charity, you find three qualities: an accommodating person, an available person, and a person that is affirming. Affirming. Because kindness here actually means to correspond to your friend or the object with which you are engaging in like manner as to who they are. So when the Bible says, let every seed-bearing herb bear forth fruit, what? Of its own kind. When you are a friend to someone, what you do is assimilate as a mirror who they are so that you can actually be accommodating and affirming and available to actually help them be more of who they are than they are. That's what a friend is. A friend is one who actually sees you for who you are. And in seeing you for who you are, they're not there to accommodate your weaknesses or your foibles. They're there to affirm the real, authentic, at the core you. Does that make some sense? All right. And so with that particular quality, it is painful to often discover that a couple may not even be friends. Right. So that is a discernment attribute that is so critical to relationships. We talked about that in our last rules of engagement, did we not? To be a friend is requisite to being what? Lovers. To be a friend is requisite to being lovers. The gospel paradigm is what? There's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. What's his name? Right, so obviously for those of us who have been dealing with the study, we know that the framework and foundation for what we're talking about really is modeled in Christ for us, is it not? That Jesus so fully bore who we are in his own person that it could not be said that Christ does not understand us. All right, so as we are looking at love here, it says love suffers long, love is kind. Love is not unkind. Love is not unkind. Love is kind. And love does not envy. Love does not engage in a kind of petty narcissism or covetousness, because that's what envy is, covetousness. It does not envy. Love does not vaunt itself. The idea there of vaunting itself is make something big of itself. To vaunt is to look at me, and to kind of lay out all of your accolades and to become the center of attention. Love does not do that. As a quality, love is not self-absorbed as a quality. Now, it's going to be important to remember that when we get back to the distinction between desire and love, which is often the pitfall for young people, as you guys know. I told you last week, the unfortunate thing about young people is they will often think that their desire is equivalent to what? Love. And particularly in the male-female relationship. So let me continue to unpack this here. Not only is it saying that love does not engage in covetousness, love does not lay out accolades so everybody can just be absorbed with it being the center of attention, like some kind of centerpiece in your living room. Like generally people who know how to make a real nice centerpiece, when people come in, the first thing you see is the centerpiece. Well, when a person has a very unhealthy understanding of identity, a very unhealthy understanding of personhood, and I think our culture is a problem. This is why I'm fighting the tension between what we will discover here in a moment. I call the personal contract system syndrome versus a social contract mandate. We'll get back there in a moment. Here, these attributes would tell us that a person that's healthy and walking with a very appropriate sense of love is going to have these qualities. Here is another one. It is not puffed up. So love is not puffed up. There's a lot that can be said about that, but fundamentally puffed up can mean two things. It's not ego-driven, and it's not easily offended. Right. So to be puffed up on a subjective level is ego-driven. You're inflating your own self-importance, like the blowfish. Or you're puffing up as a distraction from enemies because you have intrinsic fears and anxieties that force you to kind of apply yourself and make yourself big so people can be intimidated by you. It really becomes a mechanism for pushing people away rather than drawing them near. Right. At that point, when we're dealing with love and we are misrepresenting love at that level, what we know is really being dominantly operative here is fear. And what John told us is that perfect love casts that out. It constantly is driving out fear because love by nature is knowing. Love by nature is revealing. Love by nature is attracting. That's what we're going to talk about here in a moment. So I want to kind of lay these categories out so you can think about them, because these become the problem. The evasive mystery in our secular world system is that it always talks about love, and very seldom is it able to demonstrate love anywhere in any satisfactory way, right? So we know as a human race that deep down in our psyche as a people, what we are longing for are the attributes of love. What we are constantly missing is the manifestation of those attributes. So as it goes on to say, love doth not behave itself unseemly. This is a beautiful attribute too. Once again, you see a string of sort of narcissistic, unbridled, self-centered behaviors, like love does not behave itself unseemly. This would come under the idea and imagery of a child having a tantrum in order to get attention. Okay. And so it goes on to say, it does not behave itself unseemly, and it does not seek her own. There again, love is not a boomerang. Love is not a boomerang. Love doesn't throw it out there only to receive. Love is not a boomerang. That's a problem, because we have this capacity to do for others in order to get. All right, so I want you to work through that with me as we unpack this. So love does not behave itself unseemly, neither does it seek its own, and it is not easily provoked. See that? So now there's some qualities about love that reinforce its ability to maintain integrity in spite of an environment of fraud, an environment of mischief and bad behavior. So if love was insecure in its own right, in its own attributes, in its own character, it might spend more time fending off bad behavior. If love was not as fortified in its understanding of itself as might be needed, it might spend more time looking out the window, using cameras to see where everybody is, where the enemy is. Because it would be so much more preoccupied and concerned with damage to itself. Does that make some sense? And particularly when you apply that concept of love on a personal level. When a person is operating in love, there are qualities there that allow them to enjoy where they are. Okay, so we'll touch on that here in a little bit too. So it closes out by saying, love does not think evil. It thinketh no evil. Now that lets you and I know that you and I have never ever once in our lives operated purely out of love. Correct? We'll go back to the definition of love, as you guys already know. We have laid it out a few weeks ago. Love does not rejoice in iniquity. See it? Love does not rejoice in iniquity. Love rejoices in the truth. Now we'll see why that has to be the case in a moment. Love beareth all things, it believeth all things, love hopeth all things. If you ever lift that verse up, verse 7, love beareth all things, and love believeth all things, and love hopeth all things. Don't use that term all things in an unqualified way. Because if you do, you actually create an inherent contradiction. All things cannot be unqualified here. Why? Because we have a set of attributes that are positive and negative for love. Love does not rejoice in iniquity. What that means then is love cannot believe all things. It can't believe iniquity. It can't believe false doctrine, falsehood. It can't believe lies and distortions. Am I making some sense? So when we talk about love bearing all things, you don't ever take love and bastardize or prostitute love by saying, see, you got to put up with this too. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe if I am operating out of a qualitative love, I'm actually going to check you. And not just let you get away with doing something that could be harmful to us. Does that make some sense? Right. And so it's important not to misinterpret verses and take them out of context. Love beareth all things, love believeth all things, love hopeth all things. Love is ready to take you at your word. Love is ready to hold the best view of you. And love is ready to actually deal with you when you make a mistake. Now, you know I'm speaking gospel here now. Do you know that? Right? That is gospel. Right, so the gospel allows us to actually work on being believable. Right? The gospel actually allows us to work on operating out of a sense of hopefulness. So when somebody is in a relationship with another person, and that person who is exercising love knows them or is regarding them, you're hoping that that person can be everything that they said they are or said that they would be. In a family relationship with children, we believe all things about our kids. We hope all things about our kids, right? We endure all things. We want our kids to turn out well. It doesn't have to happen. But because our premise is love, we're going to give them all the opportunity we possibly can for them to actually flesh out these qualities we want to be in them. And so this is the nature of love. And then the last one here is verse 8, subpoint A. Charity never what? Charity never fails. So now, having taken those attributes and looked at them very sparsely, not deeply at all, who in the world wouldn't want to live in an environment where charity is dominant? Who wouldn't want to live in that? Wouldn't we all want to be there? All right, so we leave that to understand that where biblical love is, these things are. Okay? And it would make sense that if God gives us the gift of desire, that the most important thing we can do with desire is desire that it terminate where? In love. In love. But we've already been working through the difficulty of that, have we not? With King Solomon. You guys remember King Solomon's paradox. He loved what? Many wives. That's an inherent paradox right there, isn't it? Which means he could not have ever loved any one of them. He could not have loved any one of them. All right. One wife for 2 weeks over a 40-year period. Y'all got that? Those are the numbers. All right. You know how long it takes to even get to know a mystery called a woman? So Solomon is a child of God, loved of God. We saw all that. And there was something in him that was inflaming a massive desire that just went amok, didn't it? It went absolutely amok. As I was doing research on Solomon, guess what I discovered? For whatever it's worth, the Holy Spirit did not give us the names of all of Solomon's kids. It only gave us the name of his firstborn, the what we would call the next in line to the king. Okay? All of the rest of those boys and girls, out of all those women he loved, are eclipsed in the scriptures. I think what God was saying was, I think I'd rather have you guys look at other people as models than a man that had 500 children, from 1,000 wives. Because that's distracting from the overall model of the biblical mandate, of which most of us are inclined to, even unbelievers. All right, so here we are in our question mode. Can you pull up those questions? I'm going to walk through the first 4, and then I'm going to pick up at number 5 where we were before. These are perfect for young men and young women to be able to ask. First of all, we ask this question, and we will not develop it because we already did. Can a person desire something that is already theirs? And what is the answer?
Yes.
All right. Can a person desire something that is already theirs? And what we learned was that was the fundamental framework for the fall of humanity, was it not? That Adam and Eve were found negotiating something that was already theirs by having their head turned around and made now to covet rather than to rejoice in what they had. All right? So there becomes a problem when your desire is not informed. There becomes a problem when your desire is used for an inappropriate goal or objective. It becomes a problem. We won't do the psychoanalysis on that. We work through that. Number 2, is knowledge of self. Now this becomes the big one we work through. Is knowledge of self essential to a successful, loving relationship? Is knowledge of self essential? So we would know this biblically, but we would also know this experientially. As I look across the room, and there's on an average 400 to 500 people, 800 people that watch our classes. If you have been around and you are anywhere between 25 and 35, here's what you know. A major factor in the difficulty of you having a successful relationship is the fact that you do not know yourself well. It's true. It's true. Would you agree? Right. And so as we had defined love as what? Knowing. And this is eternal life, that they might what?
No.
Right. And we define love in those characteristics that underscore that this is an ongoing, increasing, never-ending, always abounding, multidimensional, multifaceted experience. So that love does not ever fail. When a person is actually tapping into love, they are tapping into a process that does not end anywhere. It goes on and on and on and on, even on a human level. Even on a human level. But certainly, since we have defined love as being a fundamental characteristic of whom? God. God is what?
Love.
And if God is love, it means love is immutable, love is unchangeable, love is eternal, love is multidimensional, love is multifaceted. And so when we use the metaphor or the analogy that Paul used in Ephesians 3:16 and 17, that we might know the love of Christ and be able to comprehend with all the saints the length and the width and the depth and the height and the broadness of his love. Once we capture that and bring that back in and make an application on a human level, what I would assert to you is that when you are asking or negotiating to want to be in love with somebody, you're asking for a continual, perpetual, unending journey that only ends at death. This is why the model that we're getting ready to now tap into and redefine more clearly and snatch it up out of the hands of a man-centered, egotistical culture that wants to destroy the ultimate relationship paradigm requires this kind of termination of desire in love requires a person being committed for a lifetime. And the reason why is you're not going to even scratch the surface of knowing someone without being committed to that eternal journey. Does that make some sense? Right, like you don't know someone by hanging out with them for just 10 years. You think you do. I tell everybody that I deal with in marriage counseling, like if you marry that woman at 20 years old or 25, let's start with 25 today. It used to be 15. And because the lifespan of human beings long ago in Jesus' day was only around 40 to 50 years. If you married somebody at 15, if you married a woman at 15 and grace was on you, I tell the brothers, you're getting ready to marry 7 women. The woman you met at 15 is not going to be the woman you know at 22. It's going to be a different woman at 29. It's going to be a different woman at 35. It's going to be a different woman at 42. It's going to be a different woman at 49. If you ain't figured her out by 49, it's a wrap. At 56, you married a stranger. This is so true. Now, it's true of men too, but it's way more true of women. And again, I'm going to take you down that rabbit hole. Women are developing on a ton of levels, emotionally and psychologically, and therefore relationally, because of the copious nature of their responsibilities. And it's not that way with the man. With the man, there are parameters of calling that he gets to operate out of that only require him to change a couple of times in his lifetime. This is one of the vulnerabilities of being married, young man. She figures you out by 35. And right around 35 to 40, either you've been broken or you catching up with the game. It's really true. It's really true. Okay, so, and there's a lot of metaphors that underscore this, but it's important for you and I to understand that the brokenness in our culture can easily be understood because of a failure for our culture to provide a necessary prerequisite development of proper personal identity before the two people even be brought into what we call God's franchise. If two people are not at all close to even having the proper resources and handles of knowing themselves individually, we're getting ready to have a catastrophe. Would y'all agree with that? We're getting ready to have a catastrophe. So under our third point is self-identity. Number 2, is self-knowledge essential to a successful loving relationship? What's the answer? Yes. Subpoint A, if your needs, if you're operating out of desire as like the primary, but maybe not the total. If you're operating out of desire as a primary driving factor, and you claim that you want what? Love. But your desires and their momentum and their fervor and their depth, whatever that comes with, if this desire overwhelms the object of your love or that which you are asking to love you, what you are going to do is create a massive problem for the person that wants to reciprocate. Because the lover now is trying to do what? Meet the needs of the desire. Does that make sense? Why? Because not only is love knowing, love is giving. Did you get that? So here comes the liability around two people. Now this really is supposed to be reciprocal, and I hope you guys are brave enough to have questions, because I do have 3 from the audience, from a live stream audience. But in a relationship where two people say, let's do it, that is, get married, what they are both agreeing to is the reciprocating experience of mutual knowing. The reciprocating experience of mutual what? Unveiling. Making manifest, becoming vulnerable, engaging in the peeling away, engaging in nakedness. Did that make some sense? Now you guys already know. Right now you want to put your jacket on because it's too cold in here now. Isn't that true? It's too cold. Too cold. You got to put your jacket on because it's too cold. Louis, make sure this is not on AC. Please. But you understand already psychologically if you're honest. You understand right now psychologically if you're honest. This notion of talking about I want somebody to love me. You are clueless if you don't understand that when you're talking about I want somebody to love me, you are opening the door to be utterly uncomfortable. Utterly uncomfortable. Because what you're talking about doing is exposing somebody to elements about you that you don't even know. You're asking this person on this other end to have the qualities that we just read about so they can endure your desires. And then they're saying to you the same thing. I have desires of you, Mr. Desire. Watch this. To love me back. This is not a one-way street. This is a two-way street. I peel my coat off. You peel your coat off. I take my t-shirt off. You take your t-shirt off. Y'all get what I just stated? Right. And now all of a sudden this thing about love and desire, and, I only think of you 2 times. That's day and night. All right. Okay. Now we're lying all over again. And the beauty and tragedy of what we're dealing with is the Solomon paradox. Because again, what the text says, Solomon loved many women. What we know better is he could now. He ain't that much of a man. So Solomon was trying to be like Jesus. And sometimes that's what brothers do. Rescue sweet Polly purebred, who was able to reach him with that resonance. Help! 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 Help the underdog! Right? And you get all emotionally and harmonially and pseudo-savior modality driven. And you don't have the qualities. You get to the part of the train where she tied down, and you trying to unloose all these strings and ropes, and she said, help, help! And you look up and here comes the train. And you, man, I didn't know there was all these strings to this woman. I did not know there were all these. Here comes the train. Oh, man, I got a choice to make. Are you going to jump in front of that train like Jesus did to rescue us because he loved us? Am I making some sense? He stopped the train dead in its tracks, turned around and loosed me and set me free. This is how I know he loved me. Right, but here's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. The syndrome of seeking a pseudo-savior. You set the man up or you set the woman up to fail, where you and I are not clear on the depth and dimensions and complexity of self-knowledge. Are you guys hearing me? I'm arguing for a number of things here. I'm arguing for men and women to not presume that they know themselves when they embark upon that request. Don't presume you know yourself if you're going to embark upon the quest of having someone to love you. Right, it's not fair to them if you haven't done the hard work of figuring out in the fundamentals, not in the totality, but in the fundamentals who you are. Right, so I did this a couple weeks ago. You can do it. You can go online and do what is called a personality assessment test. Don't let nobody see you writing it down. And what this allows you to do is a 100-question test. Now, I'm only expecting out of the 1,000 people that will be watching this program, this particular presentation, I'm only expecting about 10 people to do what I'm asking. Can I tell you why? People aren't serious about knowing themselves. They'd rather just keep guessing and keep lying about, I know who I am. No, you don't. If you ever get a smart male or female who knows to ask the right questions, they will make you uncomfortably clear that you don't know yourself. When you do the personality assessment test, and it's free, don't do the ones where they're going to charge you, okay? Your mama was smarter than that. You're smarter than that. They're free online, okay? What you're going to enjoy about the 100 questionnaire test is you get to actually, for your own good, be honest. So what they do between 1 and 100 is at around 20, at around the 20th question, they ask you something really stupid to see if you're still with them. Or if you're just checking off things as you go because you just want to get through that 100. And they'll let you know, hey, I need you to answer it this way, because if you don't answer it this way, what I know is you're not paying attention. Did y'all hear what I just stated? Right, so paying attention to the test allows you to see something about yourself that's important. Are you ready? Are you willing to actually look at yourself in a mirror and be honest about yourself with very thoughtful, probing, therapeutic questions? See what I'm getting at? It gets troubling after a while. I did the test a couple of times. I got issues, but I already knew that. I already knew I got issues, okay? But see, I'm safe because my desires have been wrapped up in love for a long time. So when desire meets love properly, you can work on honesty. Does that make some sense? Yes. If my desires have not ever captured love in an adequate way, I'm not going to be honest with myself, because that's too vulnerable. All right, so it's important for you guys to capture that. So in that sense, now I want to move to point number 3. Is identity of self independent of our environment? What would be the answer? No. Right, so this becomes an aspect of self-assessment that would check your carelessness about what God has done for you in your life. So we unpacked this last time. If you guys are, how many of you guys are tracking with me in the Solomon class? So is this a third class for you? Second, third? Okay, so you guys are with me. You newer ones got to go back to the 2 or 3 previous classes to catch up. Because what I am arguing is, it's not possible for you to properly identify and describe your identity. It's not possible for you to know your identity without its inseparable correlation to the environment with which you grew up. It's impossible for you to identify yourself as a sole proprietor, as an independent agent, as an autocratic being, disassociated from parents, from peers, from environment, from social context, from larger social narratives, contributing to your consciousness from the time that you were conceived to the time that you were grown. All of those elements are poured into the porous molding of your personality. Did that make some sense? So you can never say, I am my own self-made man. You'd be a liar. But now, once you go into explaining to yourself and to others your identity, now you are saying something about the community with which you grew up in. Does that make some sense? The moment you become honest about your identity, you are getting, if you can be honest, you're getting ready to say something about the community. Because I'm getting ready to argue for what I call a very dangerous perspective that goes on in our world today. And I call this, and I could put the word hyper, personal contract syndrome. This is the me, myself, and I mentality. Personal contract syndrome. Versus the social contract mandate. Now look at those two qualities. Look at those two qualities and ask the question, Which one is most biblical in defining the purpose and scope of all human beings? Is it the first one or the second one?
Second.
So now think about what that second one says. You were designed to be an integral part of a society. You were not made apart from and without regard to community. Am I making some sense? Again, we will develop that more fully. And in our culture, we are so contrary to that framework that every child today is being told that they don't have to regard their mother or their father or their upbringing or their culture or their traditions to be healthy. In fact, they are being, if you will, encouraged to carve out an identity contrary to the environment in which they grew up. They're being told to be a personal contract person, to be a sole proprietor, start your own independent identity, create your own brand. Am I making some sense? So what our world is doing with our kids is turning them into enemies of the family. And really, actually, enemies of God. Are y'all walking with me? Yes. Right. So, and this is why I'm laying this out. This is a rabbit hole, but you got to go down into it. And you and I have been products of that same false doctrine. Right. So, when God made them in the beginning, he made them what? Male and what? That's societal. That's societal. When he prophesied them as a unit. Did he not? And then he brought the man into existence. And when he brought the man to existence, he didn't put the man on Mars, on Jupiter, on Saturn, or Pluto, where the man just looked up and said, hey, I got a lot of work to do around here. I got to figure out what I'm going to call my business. I got to discover some tools. And I got to create a garden out of nothing. Am I making some sense? When God created the man, he brought him and placed him smack dab into a community, a cultured environment, a business model that was ready to take the whole world on. Didn't he? When Adam opened his eyes, he opened his eyes in the midst of community. He was in the midst of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost and the holy angels and sadly devils and demons. But he was in the midst of community. And because the Bible is real to us, it just lets us know, hey, there's a lot of good here, but we got some evil to be careful about. Now, you're going to be in the garden, but there's going to be some thorns and thistles you're going to have to learn how to avoid. Oh, and there's a snake, by the way. Right? So you and I were created in and for society. You are a social contract mandate. You are. So I'm going to wrap that proposition up by this question. Was Jesus in his incarnation a sole proprietor, autocratic entity, disconnected from context, disconnected from a social environment, disconnected from relationship with others? Was he that? No! The moment he said yes to his Father in the assumption of a human nature, he fully entered into the total social contract mandate mode. He was the servant of Jehovah. Y'all got that? Even in his mother's womb. So infinite God was conscious of the fact that when he said yes to enter into the human race, that he would be here not to be served, but to what?
Serve.
Not to be served, but to what?
Serve.
To love. Right? Now remember, love is knowing, but love is also what? Giving. So when we look at 1 Corinthians 13 verses 4 through 8, part 8, is that not a composite sketch of Jesus? The Son of Man did not come to be ministered to. He came to what?
Ministry.
Right, so what I'm getting at here, ladies and gentlemen, is this. When you and I have taken on that false contract that's at the top, the sole proprietorship, you are set up to fail when you talk about entering into God's franchise. Because your head's on backwards and it's all about you. Does that make sense? And so when you go after that woman or go after that man, frequently you are spending a lot of time ruminating. We are spending a lot of time ruminating on, watch this now, what I can get out of them. Whoa. All I need is one person to raise their hand and tell the truth. Shame the devil. You see how blinded we were? We go get a man for me. We go get a woman for me. Now we're setting that poor soul up for failure because in all likelihood, if we haven't followed the process correctly, they cannot meet your needs. You have made it impossible for them to do it. First of all, because you don't know yourself. And because you don't know yourself, you can't guarantee them love. Because you can't guarantee them the gradual unfolding of your authentic self to them. Am I making sense? And then, if you did have the capacity to gradually unfold the layers of your authentic self to them, if you didn't go through the proper protocol that a social contract mandate requires when it comes to dating, right? You got to keep it in the family. If you don't keep it in the family, we don't know what kind of knucklehead you're getting. Then that individual come along and play some slick games and some smooth words, and you go, oh, this is my match. Right? All right, so here go 3 words I want you to write down. 3 words. We're going to keep teaching right here. The first word is connection. That's the euphemistic phraseology that our secular system uses to vaguely connote the grounds upon which I think this might be the one. The word connection. Y'all got that one? I want you to start right there. I'm not going to waste the next hour and a half asking you, what does that mean? Because every one of you will have a different definition, because we're trapped by a personal contract syndrome and we can make up the rules as we go now. Am I making sense? All right. I guarantee you there's no universal definition to this profoundly psychological, emotional, physiological thing called connection. I guarantee you there's no common universal definition. Now, because there is no common universal definition to it, it's going to always be open up to interpretation. And because it's always open up to interpretation, the good likelihood is you're going to misinterpret connection with somebody rooted in your desperation. And you're going to find out a month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, guess what? We're not connected anymore. Well, what was connection in the first place? Right? So here's the next word I want you to write down. This one here will get a little bit closer to the reality. Chemistry. Write it down. Woo, I'm going into the biological categories now. We're going to go right on in into the biological framework for which God has ordained the necessary progression of humanity around the biological dynamics that lead to what? Chemistry. Right? Chemistry. So a lot of times what you're calling connection is nothing but chemistry. Did you hear that? Now be careful. Chemistry is good. But chemistry is not the qualifier for the social contract mandate called marriage. It's not the sum total qualifier. It's a good piece of the requisite interaction necessary to determine whether or not you can see yourself actually loving somebody, because if you don't have chemistry, you might as well be honest. Right? Now, there have been throughout history fabulously successful marriages where chemistry was not a prominent feature in the relationship. All right. Okay. Here we go. Pastor, what kind of marriage are you talking about? I'm talking about the kind of marriage that does not have emotionally centered people at the foundation of the relationship. I'm talking about the kind of marriage that fundamentally drove our whole world out of important necessities like survival and tribal development and cultural maintenance and bigger things that require in the social contract mandate qualities in our identity that didn't start with, well, I feel. Well, I feel. Do you guys understand what I just stated there? Because if everything revolves around how you feel, you're not marriage material. You're not marriage material if everything you've got to do for that person, you got to feel it. Honey, I'm not feeling it. Well, what do you mean you're not feeling it? What? Don't you understand the bills got to get paid? What, you not feeling like getting up, going to work, what you feel like doing, smoking a joint? You mean, well, yeah, now that you ask, yeah, I feel like smoking a joint. Right, because now we're just talking about what? Feelings. So what I say is, if you are biblically thinking man or woman, which there are very few, you cannot let chemistry dominate the marriage and define the marriage because it's amoral. What you feel has nothing to do with a social contract that says, I will love him and love her till death do me part, through thick and through thin, through hell and high water, in blessings and in cursings. We forgot about that.
That's endurance.
We forgot about that, didn't we? We forgot. Yeah. Now I got to figure out how to rein in my antipathy toward this person, because I forgot I'm supposed to love them even when they're not lovable. Whoa. Woo! Lord, I didn't sign up for this. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Sorry, if you had a pastor that preached the gospel to you and laid out the biblical paradigm and went through the biblical vows, repeat after me. Okay. Will you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold, to cherish her and nourish her, to protect her and provide for her, to leap over tall buildings in a single bound, to swim through shark-infested waters just to get her a glass of lemonade?
Okay, come on.
Will you love him and cherish him and honor him and respect him and protect his name? Will you massage him when he comes home tired, even though you twice tired because of the children?
That's true.
All of those were foregone conclusions that were predicated not upon chemistry, but upon a social contract mandate that required the integrity of covenant. Did y'all hear what I just stated? It required the integrity of covenant. This is why Paul said, in the latter days, men will be lovers of themselves. They will be hateful to parents. They will be despisers of that which is good, and they will be covenant breakers. Now, all of these things, that's 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. All of these things are demeritorious characteristics of human beings who are not qualified to do covenant. Did you hear what I just stated? They're not qualified. They're not qualified to do covenant because covenant requires people that are clear on social contract mandate. See what I'm getting at now? See what I'm getting at now? All right, so here's the third quality that goes into the 3 C's. Since you got the first one, it's called what? Connection. We just connect. We might get back around to that. And the second one is called chemistry. And the third one is called compatibility. Compatibility. Right. So this is the one as well. It depends upon how broadly and deeply people think. Like often one will imagine the perfect spouse. Loving everything that you do. Desiring everything that you do. Agreeing with everything that you agree with. And right then and there, you have completely demolished any hope for a good marriage. You have destroyed what is essential to what I'm getting ready to talk about, and that is growth. And growth in your character, maturity in your personhood. No one grows, no one matures, no one develops when all you got hanging out with you is a yes man. If the partner you married is just saying yes, yes, yes to everything you said, you are actually diminishing. You are becoming less than a person. Right. You're actually making yourself dangerously vulnerable to a hypochondriac syndrome individual because you can't be told no. So remember, okay, so here's the analogy. I'm going to help you. Here's the analogy. So what Paul did in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 8a was talk about what it means to be a mature person. Mature. Y'all got that? Mature. Mature. And then he argued in the closing of that chapter, when I was a child. Now, we don't marry children because we know children don't have the qualities necessary to actually be able to, with integrity, affirm the social contract mandate. We agree with that. You're not going to take a 12-year-old boy and 12-year-old girl in this generation in which we live and bring them together and tell them to make vows before God and man. That's a social contract. And then expect them to survive one day when you know your boy and they know their daughter has been going gimme, 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 gimme since they came out of the womb. You guys following me? Why? Because children are in need. They are largely in gimme mode. Gimme, gimme, gimme. They're in need of love. They can't distribute love in any successful level because they're not mature enough for it. You guys following me? Right. They need parents. They don't need a wife. And so when the young man marries the woman who is a child, gimme, 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 he's in trouble because he's being forced now to be a daddy instead of a husband. When the young woman marries a man who is a child, her marriage is about to sink into hell because she ain't supposed to be sleeping with her father or with her son. Am I making some sense? And this is where the dysfunctional relationships start coming into play. And we begin to see all of these dynamics playing out in what we have not been able to adequately identify as inappropriate persons in a larger social contract mandate that required more maturity before entering into it. Am I making some sense? Now, this is all survivable, and we'll talk about this in a little bit. But frequently, would you not agree that the reason why there's so much calamity in relationships is because of massive levels of immaturity? All right, of course. You got children. They're not grown people. A mature person is coming to the relationship with skill sets. You got that? A mature person is coming to the relationship with qualities, with attributes, with gifts, with maturity. So here's another phraseology I want you to put down. I'm getting ready to unpack this for the men. This is going to be a men's lesson for several weeks. I'm talking to some of the elders about it now, and this is important for you to get. This is called the apprentice journeyman paradigm of a relationship. Apprentice journeyman paradigm of a relationship. Right. So every one of us, if we're going to develop in any kind of discipline, any kind of office, any kind of calling, you're going to go through what is called an apprenticeship discipline. An apprenticeship discipline is where you are brand new at that particular gift or calling. Let's say plumbing, or electrical, or engineering, or a mechanic, which I was for many years. As an apprentice, you have a supervising journeyman or several over you as you become educated in what you're doing. And as you demonstrate competency in that field, they allow you to work with supervision over you to demonstrate practical application of that competency. Y'all tracking with me? Right. And as you demonstrate greater capacity for the fullest scope of competency applied in that field that you're in, at some point the journeyman affirms you as having moved from apprenticeship to journeyman status. That's exactly what a social contract mandates with children being produced into adults in preparation for the replication of the relationship called marriage. Are y'all hearing what I'm saying? Yeah. And so we're in the parent-child paradigm. We don't have healthy parents properly speaking into the children. When they reach chronological ages by which the hormonal element is crying chemistry, 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 not connection, not compatibility, chemistry, 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 and the parents are too undiscerning to know what to do with that, they leave those children to engage in house play. That's right. And the house play has been replicated all over the world now by grown-ups who were children, who never went through the apprenticeship and made it to journeyman status because they didn't have a proper upline to prepare them. It is, man. It is. And this is at the heart of almost every relationship dynamic in the world. Every relationship dynamic has to be filtered through what we're talking about. But since we are talking about the ultimate social contract mandate called marriage, we can't play with this and still survive as a world because our secular system has said to hell with that social contract mandate. Let everybody be children for the rest of their lives. Is that true? And then, okay, so now, okay, I'm going to do one more little parenthetical because I'm looking at Jenny. So in our world now, because we have misdefined the critical emphasis of what it means to be created in the Imago Dei, what it means to be men and women, and I've been sharing this with you, what we have done for about 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 decades is we have made the central quality of humanity to be emotionally centered. Emotionally centered. Emotionally centered. Then the mental health industry is overwhelmed. It's overwhelmed with human beings who are broken at the psychological and emotional level. It's overwhelmed. Why? because we have catered to an element that really is not central to who they are as a mature adult person. That faculty is important. It cannot be at the center of identity. How you feel cannot rule the world. You still got to get your lazy, tired butt up and go to work. Even the therapist, she don't want to get up and come to work and see you. But her social contract mandate demands that she plays a part in the order of this world and the integrated systems that are required for our world to function coherently and in good order. So she has to prove herself, he has to prove themselves to be adults. Teachers in school, I got them in my family, so I love them. They are fit to be tied as to how they're going to deal with these twisted bags of emotion who really should be already being prepared for the didaskalon, that is the apprenticeship process. Teachers should not have to be babysitting and tweaking their little emotional minds around who they are. That's a bunch of crap. They're supposed to get healthy kids that are ready to come in there and learn the fundamentals of academic study and leave the rest of their emotional BS to mama and daddy. Do y'all understand what I just stated? That's your mama and daddy's problem. That ain't my problem. Now, see, now the state is all in, isn't it? The government's all in. The government wants to be the mama and the daddy now. And that's because mom and daddy have violated the social contract mandate themselves. Am I making some sense?
A lot of sense.
Right, and it's so important for us to actually get this because under our noses, this stuff is metabolizing every day over and over and over again. We cannot act like this is a small matter. You cannot act like that because either from where you are down, you're going to be dealing with a community of men and women if you care about them. That are in this matrix that I'm talking about. Or on a horizontal level with your peers. You're going to have to learn how to engage them with this kind of insight that I'm sharing with you to help them realize what the problem is on a broad spectrum and then to actually hopefully rein them into some solution-oriented conversation that can recover a brother here and a brother there or a sister here and a sister there, rather than leaving them in the mystery of iniquity. Because that's what we are. We're in the mystery of iniquity. Really? We're in the mystery of iniquity. And the mystery of iniquity is where truth is obscured by a facade, by something that is not real. Right. And so let's begin to move forward and develop some other things. I'm under point number 4. Does the past, present, and future shape our identity? So now I want you to think this one through, and we answered this one already, because I want to be able to get through the rest of them and then just go into Q&A mode. Now, as a logical syllogism, you should know this. Syllogism is a major premise, a minor premise, and a conclusion. All right, as a logical syllogism, you should know this. If, in fact, we know that we are called to actually develop and mature into a social mandate, a social contract mandate, that maturity is what we're called to. If, in fact, we know that that cannot happen without community and resources being poured into that, would it follow then that my character, my identity, is a function of both the past and the present and the future? All right, so let me help you with that triad right quick. If my identity is the sum total of bad past, then my identity is also presently, at present, the sum total of bad present. Bad present. Just follow this through. Be ready to raise the question. If all I see in my past is brokenness, abuse, neglect, I cannot say, but man, I'm cool. In the present, I'm cool. How in the world did you get cool from all that? Right? No, you just showed me what you are by what you went through. I know you're jacked up. There's no way you can build a bridge from bad to cool unless you went through a transformation. And if you went through a transformation, then it wasn't just all bad. Some good had to come in and rescue you. Am I making some sense? All right, so here we go. So if I am really the product of a bad past, and there was no rescue, and I am presently functioning out of those qualities, so my attitude, my demeanor, my idiosyncratic ways. Idiosyncratic means my behavior that is unique to me. Everybody knows him that way. You push him the wrong way, he's going to cuss you out. All that kind of stuff, right? And then when people know your background and they see who you are right now, they go, that's consistent. Makes sense. Makes sense that he can easily go off. Makes sense that she is problematic whenever she comes up against some pressure. Makes sense, right? That same person has to affirm that the future is bleak. Did you get that? You cannot positively and with integrity affirm a good future when your past hasn't been corrected and your present doesn't demonstrate that correction. You guys hearing me? Right, so this is important because if a person isn't doing what I'm asking you guys to do, and that is to be honest about personal assessment tests. I mean, if you don't take one, fine. But if you don't know how to look at yourself, do what Proverbs chapter 4:23 says, ponder the path of your ways. Look well to your going, for out of the heart are all the issues of life. Right? So if I don't have the integrity and bravery to look back and go, man, that was jacked up what he did to me. I wonder how that messed with my head. I wonder how that messed with my capacity to deal with conflict. I wonder, did that turn me into largely a fight mode brother or sister, or a flight mode brother or sister, or a vacillator, or an avoider? Again, Jenny knows all these terms. After class, y'all can go jump on her. But am I telling the truth? Right? Because now I got to cope with me in this jungle in which I have now been confronting all of these micro dynamics from my childhood up. If I did not have some kind of intervention, which would be great if that intervention was a journeyman brother or journeyman sister that was able to see my issues and come in and draw me alongside and say, look, let me help apprentice you up out of these dysfunctional qualities that's going to ruin your life. Which really, quite frankly, a whole lot of human beings are going to face God for that social contract mandate of leaving all these children free from care who did not ask to come in here into this world, but end up coming into this world because of chemistry. You're not the child of connection, you're the child of chemistry. Am I making some sense? And that child is scratching their head going, what in the world happened? How did I get here? I did not ask to come into this world. I come into this world, I don't have an upline, I don't have rational peers, everybody is dog eat dog. This is Gotham City. Yep. No wonder the kids are living through the avatar of social media. Because they have no concrete hope in what they see as reality. Reality is not appealing to young people. Y'all get what I'm saying? It's not appealing to young people. And in 30 minutes, we're going to open the floor. So y'all got to be brave. It's not appealing to young people. And so for them, they'd love to go on to a social media outlet that's run by artificial intelligence with algorithms to lie to them. Because at least now they can get the dopamine going and they can get high and get the feel good, and they can continue now operating out of until we actually create that period in time when you can just take the pill and disappear on into a whole new universe. It's on its way. It's not far away from here either. It does start with some quaaludes and some meth and some marijuana. That's the short round trip. And it's evident that young people are taking that route because of the painful reality of the brokenness of our present world system, because we're more driven by a narcissistic personal contract system than we are the social contract mandate, which God ordained for the welfare of every human being that comes into this world. All right, here's the fifth one. Is marriage an identity builder? What did we affirm last time? Yes. Right. So here's what I want some of you to think about when you engage in this institution. You are signing up to have your character and identity molded and shaped. And if you're not willing to have your character and identity molded and shaped by marriage, you're not ready for marriage. Right. Is marriage an identity builder? The answer is yes, because what happens is once you enter into the social mandate contract, you enter into agreement to be affected by the person who has the most access to you. And this notion that you think you come complete is insane and absurd. I'm good. I'm the whole package. Sorry, honey. No, you're not. No, you're not. Let's peel back a few. I guarantee you found some raw spots and we got to heal. You just not all that. Right, and then again, remember the nature of love is that it is progressive, unending, multidimensional, multifaceted. And therefore, it is an ever new, ever learning experience. Ever new, ever learning experience. Ever new, ever learning experience. When the relationship is handled right on a reciprocal level, both parties have admitted to knowing and not knowing at the same time. So then I'll take you back as we get ready to leave this one. So the brothers, they actually have to realize that they got to go around with that sister for 7 times. At the end of the first year, you get to say, meet my new wife again. After the second time, meet my new wife again. Because she is going to develop. She's going to mature. If you marry them relatively young, you only get that cute, naive thing for about 7 years. Brother, you better take advantage of that cute, naive thing for 7 years, because after the 7 years, she's going to have some skill sets on you. Now all of a sudden, your vulnerabilities are going to come in. Now all of a sudden, she's going to have discernment and keen, intuitive perspectives as a female that God didn't give you. Now you're going to have to work on collaborating a little bit more. Now that's humbling. Because you thought you were Solomon. You could love all 1,000 of your wives. If he can do 1,000, at least I can do 7. And even if it's with the same woman. The problem is, it's not meant to be that way. So the goal of the man, this is one of the questions one of my sisters gave me a couple of weeks ago. She said, if the man is actually called to be a provider, to be a protector, and to be a producer. This is a biblical Hebrew man. We talked about this in our men's meeting. When you are able to capacitate those 3 qualities, provider, protector, producer, that's called rest for the woman. That's called rest for the children. Did y'all hear what I just stated? Children are cool when somebody else flying this plane. Children are cool when that same person flying the plane is coming home with the bread. Children are cool when he look up and he got a little sister, a little brother. By the same person that's flying the plane and bringing the bread home. Children are cool. Children are cool because they hang out all day with mama, and daddy's a mystery until he comes through the front door. And then they realize, oh, I can expect daddy to come home every day. And I get to hang out with daddy for a minute, but then he goes back in the cockpit. I told you I love a sister that came out to the DOG a couple weeks ago. She said, oh no, it was worship. She says, I never forget what you said about your son Nate. Many, many moons ago in the old building, I talked about the story how me and my family took a plane flight to Florida. How many of y'all remember that story? Good, only one or two of y'all. So I'm going to tell it again, Big Mac, for these babies. And so I gave Nate the privilege of sitting in the aisle seat because he's about 5 years old. And I sat in the window seat. And I wanted him to be free to see all kind of stuff. And so the plane starts going down the tarmac. And he was cool for a minute. And then that thing started lifting off and doing that. And he was like, whoa. And they got up and started leveling off. And Nate looked down the middle aisle. And then he looked over at me. He said, Daddy, who flying this thing? He needed security. He needed security. Don't worry, son, we got this. Let me give you the vision. See that door right there? Behind that door are two men that have their hands on the helm. They got us. I said, that's kind of like how God is. We don't see him, but he got us. My son settled on down and enjoyed the rest of the flight. That's called a journeyman hanging out with an apprentice, helping them get through the bumps in the way in the which he couldn't possibly conceive the truth without help from somebody that already had the revelation. Y'all understand what I just said? This is what's so critical about that upline, downline relationship. It's absolutely, absolutely necessary. When I say it's marriage and identity builder, what I am saying is those two people have to be willing to understand that they play a role in each other's growth. Each other's growth. Did y'all get that? Yes. Now watch this. If you know you play a role in each other's growth, then there are a couple things you want to keep in mind. One, the first thing you want to keep in mind is God's ways are not your ways. Right. So for women that are serious about hearing me, understand this. You don't control the man. You don't control him. That is a bad attitude to have. That's a child you got. You can't control him. You have to influence him. And if you don't have the qualities to influence him, you're not ready to be married. Secondly, husbands, are you ready? You don't control the woman. Now, I'll give you about a weekend and you'll figure that out. Your job is to actually secure her by holding the line of your calling so that she can come to discover that you know what you're doing and where you're going. Because she's going to have to fight like I don't know what to actually stand behind you and support you. When all of her intuition is screaming, the knucklehead don't know what he's doing. Oh, that ain't the right way. All right, Lord, I got to go learn how to pray. There you go. Now you're growing. Got to learn how to pray. Because they would do it a different way.
Exactly.
The woman would do it a different way. Yeah, but you're not the man. Now, if you want to be a man, then just end that social contract mandate and go up to the top one, because that's what you got going on in relationships all over the place now with women. They the man now. Right? But a good biblical woman knows how to get behind that man and call on God to grace her to appropriately apply her counterintuitive skill sets. See, her job is to make sure while she cooking and watching over the little ones that the parachutes work. Her job is to make sure the parachutes work. That everyone in the family got a parachute just in case we got to jump out, just in case this knucklehead get it wrong. And then when we land, we got to do it all over again because I said, till death do us part. And sometimes marriages have those kind of major turbulent scenarios. But you know what? That ain't nothing but a moment of growth. That's nothing but a period of development. That's nothing but an exposure of what God had already put in you that he's nurturing you into. All right, so there are a lot of you individually, men and women. Right now, you are in the midst of all kinds of pain. And somebody's telling you to run from that. And somebody's telling you to blame somebody else for your pain. Stop it. Stop it. Right, because the enemy is lying to you again.
Yes.
Your growth is inside that pain.
Yes, sir.
Your maturity is inside that pain. And you actually know it intuitively. You know that there is a redemptive element to what I'm going through. You know it's producing in you resources or sharpening the tools you already have. How do I know this? Because you are better managing that pain than you ever have. And it's producing in you psychological characteristics for which, without that pain, you wouldn't have. Because you're just actually a little too silly. All right, so I just need a real sister in the house. Can't we be silly, ladies?
Yes.
Straight silly.
Yes.
Tell it, damn. Tell it, girl, tell it. Yes. Tell it, girl, tell it. Silly.
Yes.
It's true. It's true. You can be silly. And that silliness is a misappropriation of your interest in nurturing. Your interest in nurturing. And you are threatened by not being in control of your domain. And it forces you to overreact emotionally and psychologically. And particularly in a context where you got to share that domain with a husband. All right, I'll let that sit because this is where the challenge comes in. A mature woman learns how to not always give vent to how she feels. Right. Because she's holding an equilibrium. All right, I want to make sure you guys get this too, everybody watching. There has to be an equilibrium, an appropriate distribution of weight on the shoulders of a social contract mandate and a personal contract mandate. This is going to come up in the Q&A. I am a person. Though I am operating out of a social contract mandate because I'm a mature person, it doesn't mean that I'm not a person. Did that make some sense? Yes. Right. So, and again, for me, you're immature if you think that it's an either-or thing, in the sense that if I am operating out of a strong sense of a social mandate, I'm actually disappearing as a person. Of course you're not. But if you seek to own your personhood as central to your calling, you're actually going to lose the blessing of the resources and benefits that come with the social contract mandate. Raise your hand and say, Pastor, expand. Somebody say, Pastor, expand. Right, good. Because y'all sitting there like, I think I got that. You didn't get it at all. Let me help you get that. Just tell the truth. So, when you have a healthy understanding of the social mandate contract, you understand that God is supplying you with resources to help you get the job done. You may, in your own situation, have to learn how to identify what those resources are. But if God gives you the humility to have the epiphany and clarity of what those resources are, now you can identify those things and go, oh, when I'm in trouble, all I need to do is go here for help. When I'm struggling with an insight, I need to go there for help. I need to be able to employ all of these elements that are part of my social environment, which God put me in to help me actually manage my calling as a person. Does that make some sense? Now watch this. Now watch this. If you are like a lot of people are today, even in the church, your dominant central thinking is the personal contract syndrome. The weight of your calling is too heavy for you alone. That's why you haven't fixed. Because in your mind, you're making this all about you. And now it's turned around. Everybody's got to come to you and rescue you. Because what you've done is made it about you. And we have moved away from the servant paradigm, which would presuppose I have a master who has brought to the table resources to help me do my job as a servant. Does that make sense? Right? And this is why marriages get in trouble. This is why when the man or the woman starts going down into that dark hole of me-ism, they get trapped by the blinders that cut off the resources that they have to help them actually create a broader periphery of sight. So, remember what I said in the first question? Is it possible for you to desire something that you already have? Right. So if you actually switch from a healthy social mandate, social contract mandate, where you recognize you're part of a thing bigger than you, it was here before you came and it'll be here after you're gone. God is with you. The Holy Ghost is with you. The angels are with you. The Word of God is with you. You got brothers and sisters. You got an upline. You got peers you can go to. But that requires humility. But you cut all that off the moment it's just you. Now you are even saying it's just me and you, God. But guess what God is saying? Oh, I ain't in on that. That was not the contract I actually affirmed you in. I affirmed you in a social contract, which means I expect you to respect your upline. I expect you to respect the resources around you. I do not expect you to create a sole proprietorship out of something that is already laid out to be a social contract. I do not expect you to neglect your brothers and sisters. I do not expect you to neglect the kingdom benefits. And somehow you just gonna work it out. It happens a lot. Do you understand what I just stated? It happens a lot. And this is where I'll put this out. This is where the idolatry of family comes in at. Idolatrizing the family. Idolatrizing the family. Where you get married to have your own family. For you, yourself, and I. Now all of a sudden your family is captive of your narcissistic, self-centered agenda. And they don't get to benefit from the larger kingdom resources. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Can I just keep it real? So a man can do this, but largely this happens with women. Largely what happens with women is when they are massively given to levels of narcissism where they get mad at every other sister on the planet. They take their game and take their kids and they go take them, and now I'm isolating all mine to myself, and I'm going to homeschool them and I'm going to teach them, and they're not going to have community. No, because ain't nobody safe but me. And the kids are miserable now because they love you. But they know you silly. They've been around you a long time. They love you, but they know you are inadequate to the task of meeting their need. They know you out of shape. You can't run up the hill with them no more. They know you don't have the broad alacrity of all of the social things that they need to be well-rounded. And if you were a thoughtful parent operating out of a social contract mandate, you'd know how to utilize this resource, utilize that resource, utilize that resource, get them into this project, get them into that project, get them into the other project. You keep them under sound doctrine. You keep them healthy in relationship in the body of Christ. Did you hear what I'm saying? I mean, I remember this years ago having to say this to a couple. This was about 30 years ago. A couple would come in, and they had 2 kids. And they were having trouble, like I don't know what, with these 2 kids. And I was willing to help them with the kids. But they couldn't see their own problem. You know what they were saying? How come there's so much trouble in the church? I'm like, because of people like you. Now, I didn't say that. Of course, I did not say that. But wouldn't logic say that if in my own familial experience I'm struggling with even trying to manage one boy and one girl, what all the other families in the church are struggling with too? Wouldn't logic say that? Wouldn't love say that? Wouldn't love say if I'm going through affliction, they must be going through it too? But narcissism would say, no, that's not my problem, that's their problem. Now, the way I'm going to solve that is I'm going to isolate mine. And then those kids are like the Amish. They can't wait to find a window to climb out of and just bolt. Letty, I forget what it's called. What is it called? What? I didn't get that.
Rum Spring Act.
I don't even know. The Rum Spring Act.
The season when they go off.
Yeah, but I thought it was called the Amish.
It is a show called.
Yeah, the Amish fleeing. I mean, man, they jumped out the window, went to the big city with their straw hats on, and woo! What is that? What's that, Sally? That's an escalator. Now, what I'm doing here is showing you how we have bought into a secular definition of concept and just kind of brought that into the community as if that's the truth. Now, you guys already know, reading your Bible, from Genesis to Revelation, the moment that God spoke humanity into existence, it was almost totally a social contract mandate. Wasn't it? Yes. It was totally a social contract mandate. And that in the recovery of all that ever got lost or broken in the Bible, it was a return to the social contract mandate, was it not? A return to the community, a return to the biblical model, a return to the centrality of worship, a return to biblical wisdom, a return to let the parents or let the fathers provide for the children, not the children for the fathers, right? Let the wives love their husbands, even reverence them, and be the nurturing domain for the home so he can be the protector, he can be the provider, and he can be the producer. Right, but our secular system hates this model. Y'all got that? It hates this model. All right, let's keep going a little bit. Got about 10 minutes here. All right, so marriage is an identity builder. 6, is marriage a personal or a social contract? You ought to know about now.
Social contract.
Right, so can marriage thrive in isolation of community? What's the answer?
No.
Right, so I give 2 models here I'm going to go through quickly. I give 2 examples why the no has to be there. There was a couple in Acts chapter 5 who operated out of the personal contract syndrome. That was Ananias and Sapphira. These are a couple who were like your big businessmen and big businesswomen. They got land, they got property, they rolling in dough, and they think that they can come into the church and manipulate the church because they got a bunch of money. So they sell a piece of land and they come drop down the dollars in front of the apostles, and then they lie to everybody. Man, we done sold all to give it to you. The husband and the wife were both narcissistic, personal contract syndrome oriented people. And God said, nah, we got to clean this up right away. Because if people start following that model, the church is nothing but a turnstile for a pimp gang. Right? Had to kill those two real quick. That's Acts 5. Zip down to Acts 12. Zigzag down to Acts 13. Zip down to Acts 18. Now we got Aquila and Priscilla. Get down to 1 Corinthians 16. We got two people who the first time you meet them, guess what they're doing? They are operating out of the social mandate contract of taking brothers and actually teaching them more perfectly the way of the gospel. They're tent makers. They got jobs. But their identity is rooted in the mission. It's not personal. They're known as the people of God who, if you bump up against them, whether it's the man or the woman, you're going to get some sound theology thrown at you. And they're going to hog tie you in and feed you good, and before you know it, you're going to be abandoning false religion and pursuing Jesus. And the last thing we read about them in 1 Corinthians 16 is they've actually got a church in their home. Whoa! So now you got the two models in front of you. Which one you think God is pleased with? See? And really, that second model is what I strove for with me and my wife at the beginning of ministry. That's what I told her. That's what we strove for. We strove to make sure that we didn't get this little rowboat of our own and isolate ourselves from the kingdom mandate. Because God had called us both by the gospel. And we understood that our relationship in marriage had absolutely no fundamental, substantial connection apart from Christ. We had absolutely no history of lovebirds, with years and years of relationship. We met one year, got saved the next year, got married the next year. Does that make sense? We met 1 year while we were in martial arts. I should have knew she was a fighter, because that ain't changed. The second year we got converted, and from that point we stopped doing the girlfriend-boyfriend thing, because Christ had saved us. And for a whole year what we did was the brother and sister in Christ thing, to make sure Christ had saved us. And we said at the end of this year, if this is not about Christ, let's go our way. Y'all got that? Did y'all get that? I teach young couples that every time we do it, because I need them to know who I am and who my wife is, so they can know. Hey, look, chemistry, cool. Put a thermometer on the chemistry for 2 years. Let's see if y'all know the Lord. Let's see if you know the Lord for real. Because if you know the Lord, he can bring that chemistry temperature down. And then we can get to know each other. We can begin to determine whether or not we see the social contract mandate as driving both of our identity. Because it's not going to work if just one of us is committed to Jesus alone. Y'all get what I just stated? Right. And then, and this was 1980. And from 1980 to 2021, thousands and thousands of people in our life, one person at a time. Bible study with one family. Bible study with two couples. Week after week after week, until God developed character, maturity, focus of vision, and understanding of the will of God. Taking two very naive, young, gullible human beings and showing them their fragility, but his stability under a social contract mandate. How that he could keep two very, very fickle neighborhood, straight hoodies, and bring them into conformity to Christ over a 5-10 year period, and then prepare them for ministry, to which we are in right now. Her doing her thing, me doing my thing, and we're still operating out of the social mandate, social contract mandate, because we recognize that's what we have been called to be. Not just do, be. Does that make some sense? And our personal lives are guarded, protected, nurtured, and cultivated to maintain integrity in our public life. Does that make some sense? Yeah, no, so we just went down to Carmel. We took off, me and my girl. Now, we can do that now. There ain't nobody at the house. Come on, girl, let's fly on down to Carmel and hang out with all those wealthy folks, like a couple country people. Woo! The clothes, a pair of khaki jeans for $500. You know I ain't gonna never buy those jeans. You know that, right? I'm going right down to Walmart and get some khakis for $14.95. But I'm looking. I'm looking with a bowl of oatmeal and raisins, and I'm looking. I said, man, one day if I was a multi-billionaire, I would buy those $500 khakis, because once you put your hands on them, you go, oh, I see why they $500. Raise your hand, y'all know what I'm talking about. It's a lie. It's all a lie. It's all a lie. The material is different, don't get me wrong, but they jacked you up with that price. We're going to hell buying a pair of pants for $500 when you can feed a whole village for a year in Africa for $500. You see how jacked up we are as Christians? So, we go down there to eat their food, to walk their beaches, and window shop. I actually bought a couple sweaters, one for me, one for her, called Carmel. So now we walking around with our Carmel shirts on. We haven't yet, but we will. And people will think, we from Carmel. And so, one of the well-to-do folks will come up, are you guys from Carmel? No, we're from the kingdom of God. You want to know where that is? See what I'm saying? Do you want to know where the kingdom of God is? It's actually got better real estate than Carmel, let me tell you. So can marriage thrive in an isolation of community? You already know the answer. What is it?
No.
Verse number 8. Was Ruth living out a social contract leading to a greater marriage for her?
Yes.
Yeah. The answer is really simple. And so to me, women really need to study Ruth as a case study for commitment to the overarching call of God in her life, even though it was filled with all kinds of tragedy. She married a Christian who was in rebellion and disobedience. She married into a family of Christians that were carnal and self-seeking. This family of Christians bought into the health, wealth, prosperity gospel. And they moved from Bethlehem to Moab, because in Moab you never have famines. In Moab it's all artificial turf. Now artificial turf is a metaphor. It's the appearance of real grass, but it's fake. It's green all the time, but it's not green from a biological effect. It's spray paint. It's an atmosphere where you can plop up the appearance of prosperity and wealth, but it's a facade. It's the artificial intelligence-induced facade of prosperity, like false churches are, like false religion is, like the prosperity gospel is. Am I making sense? They've been telling you over and over and over, it's your season! Send in $100. No, what he meant was, it's my season! Send in $100 so I can keep my season going. Ruth hung in there believing that Jehovah couldn't lie, change, or fail. And when he brought her into emptiness, because he emptied her out. When you lose your man, in the biblical sense, you're empty. And particularly if you lose your man and you don't have children, you're totally empty. Did y'all get that? Because now you don't have any kind of resources for you to be able to secure your future. Because in God's kingdom mandate, the social contract mandate highly regarded marriage as the foundation for all relationships. So while she was in this no man's land of two things, being a Jew by religion, but being a Moabite by ethnicity, she was in a glaring contradiction. Every Jew had the right to reject her as one not to even regard. A Moabite was never to come into the congregation to the 10th generation. Now, how do you overcome that kind of legal, Mosaic barrier between Jew and Gentile except by faith through grace, which allowed her to bear fruit in a barren scenario in such a way that her character became eminent? Ruth chapter 3 verse 11, please. Ruth 3:11, please. Ruth 3:11, and we've been there before. Everyone knew that she was a what? Virtuous woman. Do you guys see it? And now, my daughter, fear not. I will do to thee all that you require, for all the city of my people doth know that you're a virtuous woman. So notice what they were able to do. They were able to overcome her past by her present. Remember what I said? Her past is ugly and black, and it would have been the same way with her present if it had not been for an intervention of divine grace, bringing the gospel and depositing it in her life so that it made her a new creature, so that her character dominated who she was and eclipsed who she used to be. And everybody in the city knew that she was more of a Jew than the Jews were. And the top men in the city said, I gotta have her. Named Boaz. Jesus. For the church, who represents Ruth, who become new creatures in Christ. Old things passed away. Behold, all things become new. We were able to overcome the law in Adam and land into a greater and newer husband in Christ. Isn't that good news? Yeah. But there you go from what the way Paul put it is, and the just shall live by what? Faith. Right. From faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. Been that way since the fall. Got to walk by faith. Got to be able to see God's mission as your overarching social contract mandate that establishes you in your personhood, but doesn't blow you up so big that you don't walk in love. Because to walk in love, remember, is to diminish you because it's not about you. Right? Didn't we just get that? That's why I opened up with that text. The qualities of 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 8, won't allow me to be bigger than Christ. It won't allow my wife to be bigger than Christ. It won't allow my kids to be bigger than Christ. It won't allow my family to be bigger than Christ. And yet, that's what we're struggling with people. Everything is bigger than Christ. All right. So, let me see what the other few are. Ooh, number 9. Are you ready? Is the threat to marriage today the idolatry of self at the center? So these are leading questions. You know I'm leading you because I don't want you to have to think too much. So under subpoint A, here's how this follows. Love is giving by nature. You would know that because John 3:16 says, for God so loved the world. Love is by nature what? Right, so now watch this. So if you say, I am a lovable person, I'm ready to enter into a mutual love relationship, you're saying, I'm ready to give. I'm ready to give. Y'all got that? Right, and you may be, but what you really need to do is know that. Also, you need to know you're not ready to give like God does. So you're going to have some holes in your giving. There's going to be some air in the pocket. And your spouse is going to go, honey, where the love at? And you're going to have to admit, I don't have it right there. Oh, okay, I'll fill that in. It's called reciprocating love. Y'all got that? Okay, I'll fill that in. And then when you go, and you go, hey, where the love at? I'm waiting on it from God because, I was broken in that area. Okay, I'll pour in there. I'll pour in there because love does what? It gives. Now watch this. It gives after it knows.
Gotta have truth. See,
don't you? All right, so suppose I have to start getting people business. Now suppose though, right? You in this mutual social contract, and you come to discover that you got an issue. Now you might have known that all along, but maybe not, because you don't have to wait until you have figured out everything to get married. But what you do have to figure out is that you are committed to knowing yourself. Because you can't love someone if you don't even know yourself. Right? And then when you get with her and she gets with you and y'all go, all right, we're going to try to know each other. We do know what this means, right? This ain't going to get kind of shaky from time to time. Now what we going to do when we have air pockets in the line? Well, we're going to have to support each other. Right? Put it on pause. Figure out who got the supply. Pour in the supply. Keep it moving. Easier said than done. And only really works when we understand the larger social contract mandate, because sometimes we both go have air in the lines at the same time. We should have all kind of love flowing out, air flowing out. Everybody farting all around the house. Can I keep it real? Everybody farting all around the house. Right? This is the Gistand house. Don't come over today. We farting all over the place. Only people can come in here is the Gistands. They got a DNA system that can actually tolerate this. Once we get this problem solved, then y'all can come over. That's what marriage is about. That's what it's about. So then as the kids begin to grow and mature, they're farting all over the place. Aren't they? And then after a while, what's really interesting is when you fart, they might be able to come in with their little water and pour it in. Boy, you growing. Dad, don't worry about it. Dad, don't worry about it. I got you, man. That's so cool. That's so cool. That's so cool because now you are operating out of a social contract mandate where everybody realizes we're here to give. We're here to learn. God created a context in which we can do this in a safe zone before one of the boys or the girls go out and replicate, which we hope they do. But they get to model it in a community, right? Y'all understand what I'm saying? Subpoint B. So if love is giving by nature, mutual love is mutual what? Giving. Mutual love is mutual giving. And then I close out with subpoint D. Desire, the word here, leads. 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 Desire leads to what? Love. In the biblical expectation of things, desire leads to love. So, I have there's a 10th proposition that I want to put out, and then we'll do some Q&A. Now this one is obvious, and I think it's up there. Yeah, here it is. What then are the biggest challenges we have today in relationship? So point A, they're not easy. Relationships are not easy. Would you agree? Yes. Okay, so again, only grown people or mature people are willing to accept that. Don't talk to me about having a relationship if all you want is easy. I'm not easy. I'm not easy. Your pastor is not easy. I'm sorry. Ask Barbara. I ain't nothing easy about me. And it's not always pleasant. All right, so if you always want a pleasant relationship, you come to the wrong brother. Right? I just wake up some days with my head on backwards. Stefan. I know I ain't right. I just know it. I go, there it is again. Right? I'm out of kilter. I'm not true today. I'm not true today. I'm walking like this. I'm not true. I'm liable to lie to you today. Right? I ain't right. Ain't right. Somebody pray for me because I ain't right today. See? Now, y'all can go get another pastor all you want to. I'm cool with that. If you signed up for a pastor that's easy, a pastor that's always pleasant, Joel Osteen, go on down to Texas. No, go roll on down to Texas. You hang out with me for a week, you're going to go, PJ, man, you're a little tough. Wasn't I tough on you, boy, early on? I had that boy crying sometime. I had him about to lose his mind because I'm a mentor. Right? I'm a mentor. I'm tough on my boys. I was tough on my girls. They grown now. And you know what? Glad about it. Gifted. Accomplished. My baby girl. And I wasn't tough on her. Everybody, you just let Trin go. You know how that goes. You let the baby go. We don't remember you whooping her. Trin jumping out of helicopters like Superwoman in the military, rescuing brothers. Woo! In Jesus' name. Looking for the musicians so we can do praise and worship over there in that foreign country where she is. Right? So she's taking what we pour into them with her. Dad, I found some Christians. We worship it. Wow. Am I making sense? Yes. Right. That was hard as I don't know what, raising them kids. Do you understand that? Super hard. Every day you just wondering. You just wondering because you know you're powerless to save them. All you can do is operate out of your social mandate contract and understand this thing is bigger than you. God did this thing. Of course, I think to be a parent is to automatically be given to a life of prayer. Right? Can't do nothing, can't do nothing, might as well pray. And that's what we be doing, don't we? Yes. That's what we be doing. Subpoint C. Relationships are not always safe. That's the other part. They're just not safe. Right? And they're not automatically successful. Right. So look at those 4 caveats to relationship and realize that if you are seeking to be in one, and you are going to admit that all probability is not going to be easy, it's not going to be safe, it's not going to always be pleasant, it's not going to automatically be successful, that the only quality that can handle those 4 qualifiers is love. You understand that? Only love can handle those qualities. We just read about it. Didn't we just read about it? Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is gentle. Love does not think evil. It's not easily provoked. It doesn't give in and listen to the devil real quick. See what I'm getting at? Yeah. Questions. 5 minutes for questions. Y'all good? Y'all safe? Y'all want to just keep it safe? All right, Stefan, you can come and get the mic and ask the question at the same time. Then I'm going to answer these 3 questions quickly on the screen. Did anybody actually come up with any questions up there? Because y'all should have actually facilitated that. Y'all up there having y'all own powwow, and that's all good. But nobody even, y'all probably didn't even let them know they could ask questions. What's your observation?
So I had a few, but the most important is it's a 2-part question. So to what degree is a person encouraged to know themselves before they should consider loving someone else?
Right.
So before you answer that one, so you said that there was we are to do it by knowing ourselves fundamentally first. Mm-hmm. And so I just coined those as, okay, simply put, I'm a man, I'm a son, I'm a brother, I'm a slave of Christ, I'm an employee, so on and so forth, like the basic things. And then I asked the question, this is my question I would like to be answered. What are some examples of the weightier matters of self-knowledge that the typical person will otherwise ignore in trying to get to really be honest with ourselves? I can kind of clarify that if you need me to.
No, you don't need clarification. We don't need to overcomplicate it either. Because when we're talking about knowing ourselves, we're talking about laboring to be true to what we have come to observe because we have an interest in maturity. Laboring to be true in our, okay, we'll get you in a second. Thanks, sis. So get this, ladies and gentlemen. The person that is willing to actually know themselves labor to analyze, self-analyze. And because what we all have done in the past is actually erected our own narrative about ourselves. But it doesn't work. So your conscience, if it's not seared, says, now Jess, you BSing. Just pull it on down. And so the presupposition is that I'm operating on the foundation of grace that comes from the social contract mandate. The presupposition, as we talked about several weeks ago, is that I don't get to actually say things about myself that God has not said. All right, so now, God has said that the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked. Lord, I agree. But God has also said, if any man be in Christ Jesus, he's a new creature. I agree with that. God has said, I am seen through a glass dimly. Totally agree. God has also said the path of the just is as a shining light. I perfectly agree with that. God has said, if any man sin, he has an advocate with the Father. I'm all over that. God has said, if you cover your sins, you won't prosper. If you confess them and forsake them, mercy is all yours. All on top of that. God has said, grow in grace and in the knowledge of the Lord. God has said, walk in virtue. God has said, walk in integrity. By the way, what we do every year when we actually establish New Year's themes, and the children of Judah shall return again, a remnant of the children of Judah shall return again and take root downward and bear fruit upward, is a way in which, with a marker, we can begin to be honest with ourselves for 12 months. Am I in the way of that promise? Am I taking root downward? Am I taking the Word of God seriously? Over a 365 and three-quarter a day year, how really am I devoting enough time to go deep with God? That's a good question. Good question. I was doing some counseling last night. Y'all got a few minutes for me?
Yes, sir.
And I've been teaching this for years. I said, you cannot start off with Christ saying I'm going to hit and miss relationship with him and somehow thinking you're going to really abound in your relationship with the Lord and be an imminent blessing to the world. I'm at church once or twice a month. I'm at Bible study hither and yon. You ain't fooling nobody but yourself. That vacuum of all that other time is filled up with something. And it's creating a pathology. You are carving a groove of unfaithfulness or availability to all the other secular interests that's going to define who you are. And at a time where God may be calling on men and calling on women to serve the kingdom of God, you won't be available.
Yeah, that's right. That's true.
And then where hell breaks out in your life and you hit a crisis, now all of a sudden you appear just like all the other religious folk. Lord help me. All of the resources of the social contract mandate come to bear. All the saints praying. All the saints got your name. We're lifting you up. We sincerely want you to recover from that illness. We sincerely want you to be redeemed from that reversal, because we have been taught if we're in the body, we could have that same affliction. We're praying for you. As soon as you get healed, you go right back to the same pattern that you did.
That's right. Great.
Right. So, and what I say is, if you do that for 10 years, you will never, ever be better at that no time in your Christian life. You will never, ever discover yourself more passionate about the Word of God, more deeply committed to expository teaching, more deeply committed to a transformation of the mind, more deeply committed to the kind of acuity and insights that only people who are really with Jesus can have. And therefore you won't be as discerning, legitimately discerning. You can have the substitute of what I call being critical. Because church folk are critical, but that's not discerning. That's not discerning. And so it's really important that you don't lie to yourself. And you can know whether or not you're lying to yourself in a 6-month metric. You can know. Now watch this. If you actually have a good upline, if you're in an apprenticeship, journeyman relationship, the journeyman gonna let you know that. You've got to get busy acquiring your tools. You got to get busy honing those tools. You got to get busy practicing the fundamentals. Because the moment you get a job assigned to you where you have to demonstrate expertise and you don't have it, it's going to be a leak in your project. And now all of a sudden, either it's going to be on you, the apprentice, or on your journeyman having lied to you that you're ready to go. Right? So this is why I am what I am to all y'all. I was with a couple the other night, and I said, one of the things that right now to this day, I'm willing to die and stand before God and say, the people at Grace got a real pastor. That's right. Meaning, if you meet me anywhere on the planet, this is who I am. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get another person in Tijuana. Come on to Tijuana. You might hear me over in the corner. Is that PJ? Hey, man, come on over. No hiding here. This is what you get. Right. And this is part of the simplicity of grace and faith. It allows us to understand that God is actually transforming us in the light and not in the darkness of false religion and hypocrisy. And grace is able to take all of these extreme examples of brokenness and actually redeem them to useful vessels. Does that make some sense? Yes, sir. Right. Does that make some sense? Right. So The thing that I don't want my young protege to do over there, which he has a tendency to do, which he would quickly tell him. And one of these days, you'll be able to tell him, nice, Crystal, really nice. Honey, you're overthinking. So self-awareness is a beautiful quality so long as you don't become the judge and jury. Right, you get to actually be the observer, but you don't get to be the judge and jury of yourself. Y'all got a minute for me? Please get this. Like, you really don't even know the depths of yourself, do you? Like, if we were to go, now I see me, Lord, but I know you actually got to see me deeper than I see me. Is that true? Yes. And therefore, if my assessment of me is not at least equal in quality to his assessment of me, and I know that in quantity it's not, I don't get to actually act like him and condemn myself. You better get that. You don't get to condemn yourself. Now see, okay, this is swinging into another pathology that occurs with a lot of people, and it's called self-sabotage. Y'all sign up, Jenny will teach you about that. Self-sabotage is when you start playing the priest or the pope, and you know you did something wrong, and you're going to flagellate yourself for 6 months. Right? You done gone way past the Holy Ghost. Now the Holy Ghost is the resident Lord. He didn't check you on it. He said, are we clear on what you did was wrong? I'm the Holy Ghost. So are we clear on what you did was wrong? Affirming.
Yes.
And then what is he pointing to? The cross. Right. So now Arthur ain't supposed to go try to find the whips. Beeline to Calvary. Experience the miracle of forgiveness. And actually embrace the tenacity of faith that says walk away from that. It's paid for. Right? Does that make sense? Because otherwise you're going to create your own religion. You the pastor and you the church member. And ain't no grace there. Isn't that true? Isn't that what you would do? Ain't no grace there. I'm beating up myself because the Holy Ghost ain't getting this job done. See, I still got the same issue. And part of what are called besetting sins are a consequence of not actually seeing them honestly. Does that make some sense? Right. And if we actually believe that God is sovereign and there are areas in our lives that we know we need to have eradicated. And there's only like 10 trillion in each of us. Okay, it's only about 10 trillion. So we got a good start. Then now it requires grace through faith to believe that God will get at it in due season and cut down that root when he wants to. I mean, I've asked him to. I don't want it to be there. I mean, I already have faced God with it. So now what do I do? Is there another door where I can force God to rush and get it done? Now, after having laid my petition out before him, don't I have to believe that he will answer my prayer in due season and walk in the humility of that self-awareness attribute and maybe be able to redeem it by counterintuitive behavior with saints or greater levels of sympathy towards someone as a counterbalance to the reality that, be careful, Jess, as you are spiritual trying to help somebody out, that you don't collapse into the same thing. Am I making some sense? All right, so now this is the way we're supposed to be walking in honesty about ourselves. Yeah. All right, so what's the question up top? Yeah, take it back there. Yeah, because Nisha has it. You got to cut the mic on, sister. I can't hear you. I know you're a country girl. See, y'all up there planning on how to start the New World Order, and y'all supposed to be manning the ship. Well, whatever is going on up there between you and those two men. While they're working that out, here's the question that came offline that I think is extremely pertinent. I just want to say thank you for your study. Okay, hold on. I just want to say thank you for your study on Solomon, the relationship between love and desire. May God bless you. I have a question. You said love means knowing the person. And my question is, how much should your husband know about you? I'm jacked up, as you call it, Pastor, and there are some topics I'd rather stay between me and God.
That's right.
All right, so,
Good question.
a very good question. Now she has another piece of information. She says, would that affect my relationship with my future husband? Uh-oh. An added caveat. Because now sister's divorced. What she was meaning was, in that past calamity of a relationship, she discovered some things about herself. She's saying going forward, because apparently she want to do it again, do I share some of the painfully deep, hurtful things that I know about myself with him? See? Now that's sticky, but it's honest. Because what she is asking is, if I'm getting you right, PJ, a successful marriage is a mutual knowing and a mutual giving that requires the vulnerability of honesty at certain character levels that would nurture and develop in my spouse a confidence that I'm being truthful to them. Is that possible to achieve without telling them everything about me? Now, here's what I want to say. If you say no, I understand that. If you say yes, I'm almost inclined to say, why are you saying yes? Because, on the one hand, if the hiding of something that you know is a potential deal breaker from that person you want to marry, you may very well be demonstrating that you're not qualified for marriage, because you really can't hide a quality that might pop up in any given unique situation. Or, as to often what we think we can hide and bury, only God can bury things permanently. All right, so if you're not willing to go, now I'm going to bury this thing, God. And if you want to bring it up, I'm going to be ready to be honest with him. Does that make sense? See what I'm getting at? Without that person being in counsel with me, that question is loaded. I'm sympathetic to her notion, but going in, would you not agree with me that we're not operating out of the best framework of the definition of knowing? All right, so I'm going to leave that to my sister's probably watching now, so I'm going to leave that with you. I hope it goes well, but the problem would be the way serendipity works is, if you set up these kind of qualifiers with the man you waiting to come, he probably doing the same thing with you. Does that make some sense? But it might also be possible that he actually has a PhD in therapy and analytical skill sets to be able to peel back that onion on her and make her reverse her decision. That's always a possibility. Question.
In the case of the estranged father, my parents divorced when I was a child, and he has never sought out a healthy relationship with me or my 4 siblings. I am now an adult with a family of my own. I pray for him, but is it possible to truly love him from a distance?
Yes. Yes, it is. Obviously. Go ahead on with the rest of that question.
Or is to love him to seek him out and be present in his life?
Both. Right. So remember what I said, love is knowing, right? But love is also what? Right. So on his part, he can predispose himself to giving himself to his dad. And he can give himself to his dad in many ways that don't require immediate contact with his dad. This will be part of self-care as well. That would be another topic. As opposed to the notion that somehow until we make immediate contact, my brokenness is irreparable because my father wasn't in my life. That's a self-sabotage mode too, right? He can easily actually build a relationship with his dad on the principle that that's my father and on the principle that forgiving him will be healthy for me, right? And begin to develop a number of exercises in his life that will liberate him from those historic deficiencies that came with his dad not being there. And again, this is an open question that would require counseling, because if he has the ability to communicate with his dad, maybe he also has the calling to warm his dad's heart to him by the gospel. Isn't that right?
Sir.
All right, so it's possible. When he used the term, can I truly love him? Yeah, you can truly love somebody even if it's loving them a little bit. All right, even if it's loving them a little bit. Honor your mother and your father, even if they are knuckleheads. Does that make some sense? Of course. But it does not mean that you somehow have to give yourself over to any of their manipulative ways or painful ways. You don't have to become abused by them if they are bad people. There are all kinds of ways of answering that. Is that it?
It's a she, Pastor.
Yeah, or she. It sounded like it was a dude. But that's okay. Same thing. Same thing would be the case with a female. But that person is going to have to be clear on what love is in terms of either knowing or giving, because those are two sides of the same coin. Some children grow up without their parents, and out of the best of self-interest, they paint as positive a picture of that parent as they can. That doesn't correspond with reality because they don't know that parent. But it's healthy for them. Do you understand that? It's healthy for them. It is not healthy to paint a negative picture about someone you don't know, because that's only a projection of internal struggles in your own life. What? Okay, you can answer that after Mish goes. Mish. Bring it
How
up.
I take notes is by how I comprehend what you're saying. So my question will be after these two pieces of my notes here, because it's a development or my comprehension of what you're saying. Desiring love and welcoming it is opening up a relationship of uncomfortable circumstances, constantly to establish a life, all the while flushing out vulnerabilities in oneself that you never knew about yourself, let alone the person that you're desiring. And then secondarily, Reciprocating love gives after it knows, so not engaging relationally because everything is working out the way I want it, but looking to Christ to be filled with grace, to walk in and through faith, to edify and build for development through the integrity of the Spirit. And so, obviously, you know, I'm on both sides of the equation in my marriage as well as in my parentage with my daughter.
Keep that mic up, bro.
With my daughter.
Yeah.
And so, in that very thing of comprehending, not simply for myself, but also to pour in and influence, you know, my daughter at present, as well as my upcoming son as well. What would be the approach in mixing that up, in not overloading conversations?
The question is not super clear, but let me presuppose that what you are saying is that you want to be able to implement the overtures of a fatherly love for your daughter and your son as the journeyman over against the apprentice, and not be so overly verbose or wordy in that? All right, well, all right, so on the one hand, as a parent, you're going to always feel like you're talking too much, but you're not. You're not. And when the children are grown and they realize that it was definitely love, they're going to be thankful in a crisis for everything you said that was right. Enough words being said by a parent to the child can also help the child overcome the defective behavior of the parent. In other words, we want to talk enough to help them and to help them be able to overcome our fallacies. And that won't happen if we don't talk enough. The job of the parent is to talk to them. And just when you're feeling like you're talking too much, keep on talking. When your kids are old enough to go, Dad, I got it. And you go, cool. We'll let them coast and see if they truly have it. Hope they do. Praying they do. If they don't, guess what they know about you? My dad is ready to talk to me anytime he wants, anytime I want to. What a gift to have a mom or dad that's willing to talk to you. Do you know how many kids crave that? Crave that? Do you know how many kids just can't even begin to imagine what it's like to know all I got to do is call? All I got to do, they come on and come around the corner. Dad, you got a minute? Man, what? Come on, let's talk. Right? And they know that. They know that. Right? That's what you want. Because they actually are reserving that kind of close talk to crisis time. They need you in crisis time. They need you when they call. Dad, you got a minute? You know that call? Dad, you got a minute? What? Yeah, what? What's going on, man? You know I'm here. He knows you there. Isn't that comforting? Yeah. Mom, you got a minute? Yeah, what's going on? You know I'm here. This is what I do. What? Isn't that comforting? Of course. Don't ever second guess that.
This is a woman also. When analyzing oneself, how does one overcome the inner thoughts of saying, I hate myself?
So we
Because
talk.
of-
Go on.
Because of the faults I see in myself, even though through prayer I have asked the Lord to help me see myself as He does. How do I overcome this thinking that has stemmed from adolescence? Does anyone else suffer from this affliction, and has this kept me from ever getting married?
Oh, of course, well, in a sense, that's definitely going to play a role in her not getting married. Why? Because if she is really preoccupied with that bad history, and she has allowed it to turn into negative self-talk and sabotage, anything that's coming up talking about getting to know her, she doesn't have room for that.
That's right.
She doesn't know how to be available for that. This is why I raised the question last week. Some people might not be lovable. I raised that question, got a little pushback. Why should I get pushback on that? If the reality is that I have created a narrative about myself that's negative, and I'm reinforcing that narrative because I have not been able to grow in grace enough to actually mitigate that narrative with the new narrative of who I am in Christ. And there are people, obviously, who haven't been able to do that. Then that individual is not experiencing the fullness of God's love for them, because apparently that love of God hasn't been able to wash away the vital, traumatic reoccurrence of her view of herself from childhood to this moment, right? So she's still having to work through faith, being able to move her up out of that position and put her in a standing before Christ by which she can take on what Christ says about her. Right? You are forgiven. You are restored. You are renewed. You are transformed. You are a new creature. I'm transforming your mind. I'm transforming your behavior. I'm transforming your thinking. But somehow she has a deep set of connections going back to those failure points. And she's reliving the negative feedback dynamics out of that and actually defining herself in the present by the past. Right? So she needs counsel to help unravel that and create categories of thought that allow her to diminish that file. Shrink that file. Shrink that file down to where she can look at it and own it, and it doesn't own her. Does that make some sense? So you got to be able to shrink that file down. You ain't got to deny that it's there, but it's got to be shrunk down to the point where you can look at it and own it, and it doesn't own you. All right. And she, at that point, then she can actually believe how that a male counterpart loving her can help her with that. Because love can. It can help you with that. So again, if she's already halfway knowing herself, right? So if she bumps up against a brother because he looks at her and says, man, that girl is cute. Ooh, I'm going after her. She said, you coming after me? I got a little sign here. I need you to take this sign. The little sign got issues. Issues. So now, I mean, this is what you get. But this little sign say issues. Now, you want to keep coming? He wants to keep coming. Okay, let's sit down and talk. Tell me something about you. All right, let me go pray about that. And then we come back. Want to talk a little bit more? Where you at with honesty? You got any issues in your past? Now, if that brother all clean and squeaky clean, he ain't the one. You're not the one. She needs a profoundly thoughtful brother that can hear deeply. That can hear deeply. Because you know women got like 7, 8 categories of communication going on. That's a whole nother conversation. And you got to be able to actually peg into the ones that are substantially speaking at that moment. So that for them, that's part of that thing called connection. And if he's able to actually read that, then it may make her open to want to talk more fully. So it's hopeful. Is that it up there? Okay, good. Any questions down here? Because otherwise we're done. My brother right here.
In your description of love as knowing and giving, when does that love become codependent, or can it become codependent?
It shouldn't become codependent. It should become interdependent. Right?
Yes.
It shouldn't become codependent. It should become interdependent. We have a negative connotation around codependency because codependency would be an abuse of your gifts for the reinforcement of that other person's weaknesses. Does that make some sense?
Yeah.
Right, because so like if we know that we're becoming codependent to behaviors that a person is operating out of, that we may not be willing to right now call pathologies, negative traits that need to be dealt with. Well, I'm just going to love her. Well, is your love permissive? Or is your love constructive? Is your love sympathetic, but at the same time challenging to help that person reciprocate, to make sure that what we're dealing with is love and not, distorting or turning love into abuse or mutual manipulation, which is often what's going on in relationships. Right? So I don't like the term codependency. I like the term interdependency. Right? It's a cognitive, intentional interdependence that reciprocates. So reciprocation also means that I am watching her carefully enough to know that my insertion of love is coming at an appropriate time in response to her insertion of love. So it's an intelligent back and forth that really should be understood by both sides. Does that make sense? Right, so that person also knows he's doing that because. So actually it becomes a double communication. If you know that person and you know their love languages, let's just use that, pop that up, all right? And you are applying love language communication at the right time, and that person is aware of their love languages too, and they realize he knows what my love languages are. Okay, he's not being manipulative. He's corresponding with me, and I'm obligated to correspond back. So that becomes relational intelligence. And all of that is sticky and weird. Mel would say, yeah. All of that's sticky. It's all sticky and weird, but that's what really should be happening. It should be this practicing how to give and receive. Never take. Never demand. It's giving and receiving. It's giving and receiving. And here comes the question already here. What if you're doing all of the giving? Have you ever heard that one before? And you're barely getting the receiving. Well, it's time for both of them to now begin to ask the question, do they understand what's going on? Right? Because mutual means that we are ensuring a balance between the two. The lopsidedness actually is going to be an indicator of a problem. Does that make sense? Right. Right, because look, if we're two grown people and we have achieved a level of maturity and resourcefulness, we're not children. The children get to have more love poured in them than them give back. If your spouse is a child in certain qualitative ways, then you're pouring more into them. Now that's okay for a temporary period if you know that that goal is to mature them. But it can easily turn into a parent-child relationship where you no longer view them as an equal. And now they're resenting you for that. Right? You don't want that. I hope that helps. Go over to Jenny. She getting ready to correct me on some stuff. Yes, you are, girl.
It has a lot more to it, that's all.
Of course it does. That's your job,
Yeah,
it's
that's
not
all.
mine.
I'm like, so like 100 thoughts came to mind, but I would say one of the things is just let your yes be your yes, your no be your no. That deals with a lot of the core codependency stuff. A lot of times we're just like, because we don't, people pleasing, we're people pleasing, really. And that's the problems a lot of the time. I wouldn't say it all the time, but that's some of it. But my question, because it just keeps kind of circling around, and I've heard this in just here and there in environments that I'm in, but I think you kind of touched on it with the question of, does the past, present, and future shape our identity?
Mm-hmm.
But specifically parental trauma, I would just say like whatever that is, abandonment or abuse or any of that kind of stuff that we dealt with, divorce, whatever when we were growing up as a child and we saw our parents or we, whatever that shaped us. It's similar to Stefan's question, and like how much of that we need to overcome before we're ready for marriage, or do we just need to be aware of it and be working on it? Or is it deeper, like a Romans 28 kind of thing? Is there some forgiveness that needs to happen? So,
Very good. Now, I think that one of the only ways that question can be answered in a helpful way is to know that, and I'm going to keep talking about this until we get these categories down, because it actually encompasses the whole gospel scheme. The idea of a social contract mandate in relationship to a personal contract syndrome, the conflict that occurs when we are more person-centered than social-centered. Because social-centeredness means that you are responsible to the community. It's not about everybody just pouring into you. So social-centeredness means that I am obligated to grow up, to participate in the community. I don't get to just siphon off of everybody. Husband and wife and kids. Like I said, there are some people that can take their whole family and turn them into nothing but siphoning entities, where they're just draining everybody, and the kids can't wait to leave. And y'all hearing what I'm saying? It can get bad like that, even in the church. So the ideal scenario is that we should have community by which every person has a journeyman, apprentice, mentorship, mentor-mentee relationship in the organic sense, not some professional sense. In the organic sense, that there are mature enough people available, men to talk to men, women to talk to women, right? Where, and again, this does not occur where everybody is operating out of this autonomy syndrome. This only occurs where you know the reason you're growing up is so you can be a blessing to some other sister, right? And some other brother. And that your skill sets, as you discover them, okay, I can employ this in this way and in that way. It's not about being a busybody and getting in folks' business. But it's certainly not about retreating back and all you doing is looking at people drowning. That's not love. You 595 years old, brother. Sister, you 768. You done had 25 lifetimes of experience. You got a wealth of information to be able to help somebody. Right?
Can I add something?
But I do want to say that question is so absolutely germane, but you know that. You know the layers that go underneath the issue of an individual who is asking, how deep do I go with myself? Right? You know that. And the way that's going to be answered is, what are the resources that you have to help you with that? It's not about you doing that by yourself. Right? And then also, if you have a good spouse who is right there with you, reciprocating that journey, you're going to be surprised as to how much of a benefit that is. That's the whole point of a help me. It really is. Where you don't have to heal upon every revelation of your weakness because you got support. Does that make sense? You ain't got to heal. Okay, here come another ugly thing I'm doing. Man, here you go again. I can't do nothing. I got to stay. Can't even go to work. I'm sorry, man. I just looked at something in myself. Man, I'm stuck right here. Sorry, man. I got to. No. I'm liberated in Christ. I'm empowered in Christ. I'm graced by Christ. He's kept me thus far. I'm a broken vessel, but I'm a used vessel. I'm a cracked vessel, but I'm a used vessel. I'm leaking out quick. You better get some now, because by this evening I'm going to be empty. And then you're going to see me being carried back into the warehouse to get filled up again and glued back. Right? And that's our walk as men and women between grace and glory. Well, what else you going to say, sis?
Well, I was going to talk a little bit about resentment when it comes to some of that. Like, someone said, and I don't know if there's any truth to this, but I do see kind of these patterns happening where people do end up with someone like their opposite sex parent, right?
Man, if that ain't a common pattern, I don't know what is.
Right. So, and then, I mean, my response, okay, I'll say what he said, but he felt like you end up being with, this particular person was a male, but you marry your mother, but you're still resentful of your mother, so then you start acting out all this resentment towards her, and she can never really please you or meet your needs type stuff. And I mean, he was going to like a toxicity place, right, where it's toxic. But then I believe that on some level that God is healing us from some of those relationships. Like, okay, so obviously I need to, where my mom or dad, whatever, failed, or whatever you want to call it, because they're a sinner, right? Then God is healing us, sanctifying us through marriage, and we're looking at that person for some of that too. This is in the privacy of the marriage, but also, like you said, in the social. But I don't know that people are always aware of that. Like,
they're not.
Yeah.
They're not. But what I would say about that element there that I recognize and affirm, the liability of kind begetting kind. Bad parenting producing pathological images in their kids. That's almost unavoidable. Okay? It's almost unavoidable. What I don't particularly care for, this is going to cause some people to be mad at me. I don't particularly care for that being an excuse. Okay? I don't see the Word of God making the argument that every time I have an issue, I get to blame it on the dysfunctionality of my mother or my father. I don't see that. Now, I recognize it, but I don't see that as the way to actually own my sin. Right. And so that model for me keeps paying the therapist to tweak around in my head and tell me it's all right to blame my mom and my daddy for my brokenness. That model is not a gospel solution. Are y'all hearing what I'm saying? Don't get me wrong. I mean, I was just talking to one of the guys that are going to be part of the mentoring group. If I can get a handful of my 40 and 50 and older guys to actually buy into becoming journeymen around here to help the downline, right? And I was just telling them about how growing up, I hated my father for the way he was. By the time I was 17, I was just like him with one less point to go. One more notch on the list of what it meant to be Mr. Gistand, and I was there. Now, what was that about? It was about culture. It was about tradition. It was about environment. It was about the resources that were in that community. It was about me being in a community by which that particular prospect was almost unavoidable as an outcome in my life. All the while I was saying I didn't want to be like him, I was becoming him. And I had no idea what it would take to not be like him, since a large portion of it was both biological and sociological. Unless my sociology changed, and unless my biology changed, it would have been fundamentally inevitable. Agree? Agree? And here comes the rescue. Here comes the intervention at 17 years old, turning me in a different direction, delivering me from me, which was also delivering me from him. Right. So what we have to be careful to know is regeneration has to be an authentic reality in our life as a conversion, or else what we're doing is plastering over the past, for which that plaster is too thin for the depths of that history not to poke through that plaster and expose me for having the same fundamental roots. But if there is real regeneration, there's a new root producing new fruit. While both roots coexist in the same body, a healthy faith practice allows me to overcome my old man, more fundamentally rooted in my old man. Does that make sense? Yes. Right, but if I'm just religious, my old man is going to pop up and prove to everybody he the old dude, the fruit didn't fall far from the tree. We have to really, really be truly converted. And then we have to fight by faith like I don't know what for that conversion to manifest itself in attributes that gradually, but not permanently, distance us from what we used to be. And we have to believe that grace can do that. Otherwise, because some of us too po. So po we can't even add the OR to it. We so po we can't pay the therapist to play around in our head and help us overcome that stuff. We need a real Savior and real grace to be able to simultaneously help us to endure that ugly old man while emerging up out of him, going in a direction contrary to him, so that we can own the truth of the scriptures. He that is born of God does not continue on that path of sin, because God's seed is in him, and he cannot continue in that direction. All right, Father, we thank you for your mercy and your kindness and your goodness. We thank you for the class that has come out. We thank you for hungry hearts that want to be able to get at these matters of desiring love in all kinds of relationships. And I'm asking you that you would continue to grow my sisters up, which is what you're doing. And we can tell that by the way they engage each other in conferences and meetings so zealously, and then also so qualified on so many levels to speak into the sisterhood, for which we are so thankful. We're praying for that with our brotherhood too, that you would grant our older men to make themselves available, to be trained on how to speak to the downline, and be a blessing to our youth and our children, our boys, so that we can help redeem a community of men and women for the next generation in desire and in love. As we go our way, Lord, help us to understand that you've called us into a social contract mandate that takes our person and joins it with your person and your purpose and your plan, and that you're able to cause us to do above and beyond anything that we would think or ask because of the grace that you've given us in Christ and the forgiveness that's already there and the righteousness that establishes us in who we are. May that be true for us, our children, our children's children, to the third and fourth generation of them that love you and keep your commandments. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.